The banker's finger hovered over the mouse, one click away from destroying everything Tom and Lisa Thompson had built in 15 years of marriage. Gerald Moss didn't even look up from his screen as he spoke, his voice carrying all the warmth of a February grave. "Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson, your account is 90 days past due. The bank has been extraordinarily patient, but patience has limits." Tom stared at the number glowing on the monitor between them. $287,000. The mortgage they'd scraped together every month for 12 years, now an impossible mountain of debt they couldn't climb. His hands, calloused from years of construction work, clenched into fists on his lap. Beside him, Lisa's breathing had gone shallow, the way it did when she was fighting back tears. She taught second grade at Riverside Elementary, had been there for 9 years, loved those kids like they were her own. But her salary of $2,847 a month barely covered groceries anymore, not after the flood took everything else. If you're watching this and you've ever felt the system crush you under its weight, subscribe right now. Because what happens next proves that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Hit that button, drop a like, and comment where you're watching from, because this story is going to restore something you thought was dead. And if you skip it, you'll miss the moment when 12 of the most dangerous men in Colorado became heroes. Don't let that happen. "The insurance company denied our claim," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hands were folded in her lap, knuckles white. "Hurricane Devine destroyed our house 4 months ago. Everything we owned. We've been living in a FEMA trailer in our own front yard because we can't afford to rebuild." Gerald finally looked up, his eyes cold behind wire-rimmed glasses that probably cost more than the Thompsons spent on food in a month. "Mrs. Thompson, I sympathize with your situation. Truly. But the bank's position is clear. Your insurance dispute is between you and Mountain Trust Insurance. We require mortgage payments regardless of your personal circumstances." Personal circumstances. Tom felt something hot and bitter rise in his throat. Personal circumstances. Like their entire life wasn't currently sitting in a rusted metal box that leaked when it rained, that turned into an oven when the sun hit it, that smelled like mildew and defeat no matter how much bleach Lisa used. "We've paid you $156,000 over 12 years, Tom said, his voice tight. "Never missed a payment until the flood. Not once. That house is worth $310,000. We've got $154,000 in equity. You're telling me there's no way to work this out?" Gerald's expression didn't change. Through the window behind him, Tom could see the parking lot where their pickup truck sat, a 2008 Ford with rust eating through the wheel wells. They'd sold both their good cars 3 months ago, used the money to buy food and keep the lights on in that godforsaken trailer. Lisa's Honda Accord that she loved, that she'd saved 2 years to buy, gone. Tom's Silverado that he'd rebuilt himself, engine by engine, gone. Sold to a dealer who'd given them half what they were worth because he knew they were desperate. "Mr. Thompson," Gerald said, pulling a manila folder from his desk drawer. "The bank has a fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders. We've already extended you considerable grace by not initiating foreclosure proceedings 60 days ago. But that grace period has expired." He opened the folder, pulled out a form with the bank's logo at the top. "You have until Friday at 5 p.m. to bring your account current. That's $18,400 in back payments plus the current month's mortgage of $3,200. Total, $21,600. Lisa made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Tom reached for her hand, found it trembling. "And if we can't?" Tom asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then on Monday morning, we initiate foreclosure proceedings. The property will be auctioned within 30 days. Gerald slid the paper across his mahogany desk, the surface so polished Tom could see his own reflection in it, distorted and small. "I need you to sign this acknowledgement that you've been informed of the timeline." Tom looked at the paper. Legal language, dense and impenetrable, but the meaning was crystal clear. "Sign this, and the countdown begins. 4 days to come up with $21,600 they didn't have, couldn't borrow, couldn't steal. For days until everything they'd worked for became someone else's property. Behind Gerald's head, mounted on the wall, was a photograph. Gerald and his family on a yacht, somewhere tropical, everyone smiling in expensive sunglasses. Tom recognized the watch on Gerald's wrist in the photo, a Rolex Submariner, the same one currently sitting on Gerald's wrist. $12,000 minimum. Probably more. Can we have until Monday to think about our options? Lisa asked. Her teacher voice, the one she used with difficult parents, calm and reasonable even though Tom could feel her shaking beside him. The timeline is non-negotiable, Gerald said. Friday at 5 p.m. After that, the decision is out of my hands. The bank's legal department takes over. Out of his hands. As if Gerald wasn't the one making this happen. As if he was just a cog in a machine instead of a man who could choose mercy and was choosing cruelty instead. Tom wondered if Gerald would think about them at all this weekend, or if the Thompsons were just another file to close before he went home to his big house in the suburbs, to his yacht-owning life where nobody's mortgage was ever 90 days past due. Tom stood up, the chair scraping against the polished floor. We're not signing anything today. Gerald's eyebrow raised a fraction of an inch. Mr. Thompson, refusing to sign doesn't change the timeline. It's simply an acknowledgement that. I know what it is, Tom interrupted. And I'm not signing it. Come on, Lisa. Lisa rose beside him, still holding his hand. They walked toward the door, past the perfectly arranged waiting area with its leather chairs and its flat-screen TV playing CNBC on mute, past the receptionist who wouldn't meet their eyes, out into the parking lot where the September sun was too bright and too hot and too indifferent to their suffering. Tom's phone buzzed in his pocket as they reached the truck. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Probably another debt collector, or maybe the insurance company calling to deny their appeal for the third time. He almost sent it to voicemail. But something made him answer. Maybe desperation. Maybe the wild hope that maybe, somehow, this was someone calling with good news, with a miracle, with anything other than more bad news. Yeah, Tom said, his voice rough. Silence on the other end, just breathing and background noise that sounded like wind. Then a voice, deep and gravelly, with an edge that made Tom's spine straighten. Tom Thompson? This is Axel. You remember me. Tom froze, his hand on the truck door, his whole body going rigid. Lisa was watching him, saw his face change, mouth, who is it? But Tom couldn't answer because his brain had just jumped back 6 months, to the worst night of his life, to the hurricane and the flood and the roof where 12 men were drowning. Axel, 6'4", 280 pounds, president of the Hells Angels Blackwater chapter. Covered in tattoos, face like a scarred mountain, eyes that had seen things Tom couldn't imagine. Axel, who'd been shaking so hard on that roof that Tom could see it from 50 yards away. Axel, who'd begged them for help with tears streaming down his face. Axel, who'd given Lisa a business card afterward and made a promise that Tom had assumed was just gratitude talking, just the emotion of the moment, not something real. I remember, Tom managed to say. Good, Axel said. Brother, why didn't you call us? We just heard about your situation. Tom's throat tightened. How did you? We keep track of family, Axel said, and there was something in his voice, something warm beneath the gravel. Your family now? That night, in the flood, what you did, we don't forget that. So I'm asking you again, why didn't you call? I didn't think. Tom trailed off. Didn't think what? That a biker gang would care? That the card was real? That anyone in the world gave a damn whether Tom and Lisa Thompson lost their house? What's the damage? Axel asked. How bad is it? Tom looked at Lisa, at her red-rimmed eyes, at the way she was biting her lower lip to keep from crying in a bank parking lot. He looked at the FEMA trailer they were living in, visible from here, a white metal box that represented everything they'd lost. He looked at the sky, cloudless and blue and empty of answers. We're losing our house on Friday, Tom said quietly. Insurance denied our flood claim. Said the damn failure wasn't covered in our policy. We're $287,000 in debt with no way out. The bank's foreclosing. It's over. Silence again, longer this time. Tom heard voices in the background on Axel's end, someone laughing, the distant sound of motorcycles. Then Axel spoke again, and his voice had changed, had gone hard and sharp as a blade. Text me your address. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Don't let that bank touch your property. You understand me. Axel, you don't have to. Friday morning, Axel interrupted. Be home. We're coming. What do you mean you're? But the line was already dead. Tom stood there in the parking lot, phone pressed to his ear, listening to silence. Lisa was staring at him, questions written all over her face. Who was that? She asked. Tom lowered the phone slowly. That was Axel. From the flood. He says they're coming on Friday. Coming for what? Tom looked at his wife, at this woman who'd stood beside him through 12 years of marriage, through poverty and struggle and now catastrophe, who'd never once complained, never once blamed him for buying a house in a flood zone, never once suggested giving up. He loved her so much in that moment it hurt. I have no idea, he said. 6 months earlier, at 3:17 in the morning, Tom's phone screamed with an emergency alert that turned his blood to ice water. The sound cut through sleep like a chainsaw, dragging him from dreams into a nightmare that was somehow worse because it was real. He grabbed the phone off the nightstand, Lisa already sitting up beside him, her hand finding his shoulder in the darkness. Hurricane Devine, Category 4. Dam failure imminent. Evacuation mandatory. Blackwater Valley. Estimated flood depth 15 to 20 feet. Leave immediately. The words glowed white against the red emergency screen. Tom's brain struggled to process them, still half asleep, still hoping this was somehow a drill or a mistake. Then he heard it. Rain hammering against the bedroom window like someone throwing gravel, and beneath that, a sound that made his stomach drop. Water. Running water, but wrong. Too loud. Too close. He threw off the covers and ran to the window. The street below was gone. In its place, a river, black and churning under the streetlights, already lapping at the bumpers of parked cars. As he watched, Mrs. Patel's garden gnome floated past, bobbing in the current like a tiny drowning man. Tom. Lisa's voice was steady, but he could hear the fear underneath. She was already out of bed, already pulling on jeans. How long do we have? He looked at his phone again. The alert had come through at 3:17. It was now 3:19. 2 minutes since the warning, and the water was already in the streets. The dam was 12 miles upstream. If it had already failed, if the wall of water was already coming down the valley, they had minutes. Maybe less. We need to go now, he said. Grab the emergency bag. I'll get the boat. They'd talked about this, planned for it, the way everyone who lived in the Blackwater Valley planned for it. The dam was old, built in 1952, and every hurricane season brought whispers that maybe this would be the year it failed. They had an emergency bag packed with documents, cash, Lisa's grandmother's jewelry, photo albums. And they had the boat, a 14-foot aluminum fishing skiff that Tom had bought 3 years ago for weekend trips to the lake. It sat in their backyard now, tied to the fence, meant for bass fishing and beer drinking, not for saving their lives. Tom pulled on boots and a jacket, his hands shaking as he tied the laces. The power died as he reached for the bedroom door, plunging everything into darkness. Lisa's flashlight clicked on behind him, a small circle of light that seemed pathetic against the enormity of what was happening. They ran down the stairs, Tom carrying the emergency bag, Lisa grabbing things as they went. Her laptop, the box of letters from her mother who'd died 5 years ago, a framed photo of their wedding day. Things that wouldn't matter if they drowned, but would matter if they lived. The back door stuck when Tom tried to open it. Water pressure from outside, already 6 inches deep in their yard. He put his shoulder against it and shoved, and it gave way with a rush of cold water that soaked his boots instantly. The backyard was a lake. Their garden, the one Lisa had spent 3 years cultivating, was underwater. The fence was leaning, about to go. The boat was still there, straining against its moorings, the aluminum hull catching Lisa's flashlight beam. Tom waded to it, the water up to his knees now and rising fast, carrying debris, branches, garbage, things he couldn't identify in the darkness. The boat was rated for 800 pounds and had a 15-horsepower outboard motor that Tom maintained religiously. It had never failed him. "Please don't fail me now," he thought, untying the ropes with numb fingers. Lisa climbed in first, moving to the bow to balance the weight. Tom threw in the emergency bag, then grabbed the side and hauled himself over, water streaming off his clothes. The boat rocked violently, and for one terrible moment, he thought they'd capsize before they even started. Then it steadied. Tom moved to the stern, his hand finding the motor's pull cord. One pull. Nothing. Two pulls. The motor coughed, died. The water was at the bottom of their back door now, pouring into their house. Tom could hear it, a rushing, gurgling sound that meant everything they owned was being destroyed in real time. Three pulls. The motor caught, roared to life, settled into a rough idle. Tom had never been religious, but he said a prayer of thanks to whatever God watched over fools in aluminum boats. He twisted the throttle, and they lurched forward, away from the house, into what used to be their neighborhood and was now a flooded Hell's Cape. Route 9 was the high ground, 3 miles east. If they could get there, they'd be safe. Tom oriented himself by the streetlights that were still working, by the shapes of houses he'd known for 12 years, and pointed the boat east. They'd made it 2 blocks when Lisa grabbed his arm. "Tom," she said, pointing. "Look." He followed her finger and saw it. The old mechanic shop on the corner of Route 9 and Industrial Drive, the one that had been abandoned for 5 years, was half submerged. Water lapped at the roof, and on that roof, illuminated by a flash of lightning, stood 12 massive figures. Even from 100 yards away, even in the storm and the darkness, Tom recognized what they were. The leather cuts, the patches, the motorcycles that must have been driven up there before the water got too deep. Hell's Angels. The Blackwater chapter ran out of that old mechanic shop, had for a decade. Everyone in town knew it. Everyone in town avoided it. Tom had seen them around, impossible to miss. They'd roar through town on weekends, a thunder of chrome and danger, heading out to wherever it was that outlaw bikers went. People crossed the street when they saw them coming. Store owners locked their doors. The sheriff kept his distance unless he absolutely had to engage, and even then, he brought backup. And now they were drowning. Tom could see them clearly as he brought the boat closer. 12 men, all huge, all wearing their leather despite the rain. Their motorcycles, beautiful custom machines worth more than Tom's house, were already underwater. One of them, a younger guy with wild eyes, was trying to pull his bike up to the roof with a rope, refusing to let it go even as the water crept higher. "We can't," Tom said, his voice barely audible over the storm. "Lisa, look at them. They're massive. The boat's rated for 800 pounds. 12 guys that size. We're talking 3,000 pounds minimum. We'll sink." Lisa was quiet, her flashlight playing over the men on the roof. Tom could see their faces now. Fear. Raw, animal terror. One of them, the biggest, was on his knees, gripping the edge of the roof. Even from the boat, Tom could see he was shaking. "If we leave them, they die," Lisa said softly. Then louder, over the wind. "Tom, they die. If we take them, we all die. Maybe." Lisa turned to look at him, water streaming down her face. "Or maybe we save 13 lives instead of 2. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Save people when we can." Tom looked at his wife. 29 years old, elementary school teacher, who volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends and cried during commercials. The gentlest person he'd ever known. Also the bravest. He turned the boat toward the roof. As they got closer, the biggest biker saw them. He stood up, waving his arms, and Tom got a good look at him. 6'4" easy, probably 280 pounds, arms like tree trunks, face like granite that had been broken and reset wrong. Tattoos covered every visible inch of skin. The patch on his cut read President above a name, Axel. Tom pulled the boat alongside the building, killed the motor. The water was rising fast, maybe 6 inches every 10 minutes. In an hour, that roof would be underwater. "Listen to me," Tom shouted over the storm. "We can do this, but you have to do exactly what I say." "Exactly. One wrong move, and we all go down." Axel nodded, water streaming off his beard. Up close, Tom could see his eyes, and what he saw there shocked him. This man, this president of the Hells Angels who probably terrified everyone he met, was absolutely paralyzed with fear. "I can't swim," Axel said, and his voice cracked. "I can't swim, and I'm too heavy for that thing." "Then you'd better listen to every word I say," Tom replied. "I'm Tom. This is Lisa. We're going to get you out of here, but you do exactly what we tell you." "Axel," the big man said. "They call me Axel. I'm the president." "Nice to meet you, Axel. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to take 4 of you at a time. That puts us right at the edge of the boat's capacity. Maybe over, but it's the best we can do. You're going to move slowly. You're going to sit exactly where I tell you, and you're going to stay very, very still. Understand?" "Where are you taking us?" one of the other bikers asked, younger, with a scar across his cheek. "High ground. Route 9. Maybe a quarter-mile from here." Tom looked at the 12 men. "We'll have to make 3 trips. It's going to take time. The water's still rising. But if you trust us, we can do this." Another biker, thin as a rail with ghost-pale skin, laughed bitterly. "Trust you? We don't even know you." "No," Lisa said, her voice cutting through the wind like a blade. "But you're out of options. So either you trust us, or you die on this roof. Choose now." The men fell silent. Tom saw them exchange glances, saw the calculation in their eyes. They were criminals, probably. Had done things Tom couldn't imagine, wouldn't want to know about. But right now, they were just men who wanted to live. "All right," Axel said. "Tell us what to do." Tom pointed at Axel and 3 others. "You 4. First trip. Axel, you're coming because you're the president and because you're terrified, and I need you calm when we come back for the others. On my count, you're going to step into the center of the boat. Don't grab the sides. Don't stand up. Step in and immediately sit down in the bottom. Ready?" Axel looked at the gap between the roof and the boat, maybe 4 feet of churning black water full of debris. His face had gone pale. "I can't," he whispered. Lisa stood up in the boat, against every rule Tom had just laid out, and extended her hand. She was 5'3", maybe 118 pounds, soaking wet. Axel was a giant. "Yes, you can," she said. "I've got you." Something in her voice, in her absolute certainty, steadied him. Axel took a breath, closed his eyes, and jumped. The boat pitched violently. Water poured over the gunwale. Tom threw his weight to the opposite side, and Lisa dropped to her knees, counterbalancing. For one terrifying moment, they were going over. Tom could feel it, could feel the boat tipping past the point of no return. Then it steadied. Axel lay in the bottom, gasping, his massive frame curled up like a child. "Good," Tom said, his heart trying to pound out of his chest. "That's good. Next." The other 3 came faster, one at a time, the boat sitting lower with each addition. By the time all 4 were aboard, water was coming over the sides with every wave. Tom started the motor, grateful when it caught on the first pull, and turned toward Route 9. The trip took 8 minutes that felt like 8 hours. Tom navigated by landmarks he could barely see, past houses he'd known his whole life, now nothing but dark shapes in darker water. The motor strained with the weight. Twice they hit submerged obstacles, and twice Tom was sure they were going down. But they made it. Route 9 was packed with people, maybe 50 survivors huddled on the high ground. When they saw the Hells Angels climb out of the boat, many recoiled. Parents pulled children behind them. Tom saw the fear in their eyes, saw them looking at these tattooed giants like they were a threat instead of victims. The bikers saw it too. Axel's face hardened. "We'll stay over here," he said quietly, gesturing to a spot away from the main group. "Don't want to scare people." "You'll do no such thing," an elderly woman said, stepping forward. Mrs. Kim, who owned the Korean grocery on Main Street. "There's room under that tarp. Everyone's welcome." Tom didn't wait for the gratitude. He was already turning the boat around, heading back for the second group. Lisa went with him, refused to stay behind, and together they made 2 more trips through water that rose higher each time, through debris that got thicker, through a storm that showed no signs of stopping. The third trip was the worst. The motor died 50 yards from safety, and they had to paddle with their hands, Tom and four bikers rowing like their lives depended on it, because they did. They made it with maybe 90 seconds to spare before the mechanic shop roof went completely underwater. On the high ground, all 12 bikers collapsed, some crying, some laughing, some just staring at the water in shock. Axel found Tom and Lisa, pulled them both into a hug that crushed the air from Tom's lungs. "You saved our lives," Axel said, his voice thick. "You didn't have to. That boat was overloaded. You knew you might die, but you came back anyway." He pulled out a business card, soaked and barely legible, and wrote something on the back with a Sharpie one of the other bikers handed him. He gave it to Lisa. "You ever need anything," Axel said. "Anything at all, you call this number and ask for me. The Hells Angels don't forget debts. You and your husband, your family now. You understand? Family." Lisa took the card, tucked it into her jeans pocket. She was exhausted, soaked, shaking from adrenaline. She nodded, managed a smile, and then promptly forgot about it. For 6 months, that card sat in her jeans. She washed those jeans a dozen times, hung them to dry, folded them, wore them again. The card went through the wash cycle after cycle, the ink bleeding, the paper disintegrating, until it was barely more than a waterlogged scrap with a phone number that was almost impossible to read. Until today, when Tom's phone rang in a bank parking lot. When Axel's voice came through the speaker saying 4 words that would change everything. "Brother, why didn't you call us?" And now, standing in that same parking lot with foreclosure breathing down their necks and nowhere left to turn, Lisa remembered. She ran to the FEMA trailer, tore through her closet, found those old jeans at the bottom of a pile. The card was there, a miracle of survival, faded to almost nothing but still readable if you squinted. 555-0147. The number Axel had written 6 months ago, when he'd promised they were family, when he'd sworn the Hells Angels never forget. Lisa held the card up to the light, her hands trembling. Tom stood beside her in the cramped trailer that smelled like mildew and defeat, staring at this fragile piece of paper that might be their last hope or might be nothing at all. "What did he mean, they're coming?" Lisa whispered. Tom shook his head. He had no idea. No idea what 12 Hells Angels bikers could do against a bank, against an insurance company, against a system designed to crush people like them. No idea if this phone call was salvation or just Yanchang ing the inevitable. But in 48 hours, on Friday morning at 9 o'clock, they were going to find out. Thursday night, Tom and Lisa didn't sleep. They lay in the narrow bed in the FEMA trailer, listening to the metal walls tick and creak as the temperature dropped, both of them staring at the ceiling that was exactly 7 feet above their heads. Tom had measured it once, in a moment of despair, just to confirm how trapped they were. "What if they're coming to collect?" Lisa whispered into the darkness. "What if we owe them now? What if saving their lives means we're, I don't know, obligated somehow?" Tom had thought the same thing. He'd spent hours researching the Hells Angels on his phone while Lisa pretended to sleep beside him. What he'd found hadn't been comforting. Federal racketeering cases, drug trafficking allegations, violence, turf wars. These weren't the kind of men you wanted to owe a favor to. Or, Tom said slowly, what if they actually want to help? Lisa turned her head to look at him. In the dim light filtering through the trailer's small window, he could see her eyes, red-rimmed from crying earlier. How? How could they possibly help? We need $21,000 by tomorrow at 5. Even if they wanted to give us money, which they won't, that's not the kind of cash people just have lying around. Tom didn't answer because he didn't have an answer. He just reached for her hand in the darkness and held it until the sky started to turn gray outside, until Thursday became Friday, until their last day before foreclosure arrived with all the mercy of a blade. At 8:30 a.m., Tom was in the trailer's tiny bathroom, shaving with a disposable razor and cheap foam that smelled like chemicals, when he heard it. Distant, rumbling, like summer thunder, except the sky outside the small window was clear and blue. The sound grew louder. Tom rinsed his face, grabbed a towel, and stepped into the main living area where Lisa was making instant coffee on the hot plate that served as their kitchen. She'd stopped moving, the kettle frozen in her hand, her head tilted toward the window. "Do you hear that?" she asked. The rumble became a roar. Not thunder. Engines. Dozens of them. Getting closer, the sound building until the trailer walls vibrated and Tom's coffee cup rattled on the folding table. Lisa pulled back the curtain. "Oh my God," she breathed. Tom moved to the window, looked out, and his brain struggled to process what he was seeing. Motorcycles. Coming around the corner of Maple Street in a formation so tight and precise it looked military. 2 columns, matching speed, chrome glinting in the morning sun. Tom started counting. 10 bikes. 20. 30. He stopped counting at 40 because more kept coming, an endless stream of leather and metal and thunder. At the front rode Axel on a massive custom chopper, its handlebars high and wide, its engine note deeper than all the others. Behind him came the bikers Tom recognized from the flood. Gunner with the scar. Tiny, who was actually enormous. Ghost with his pale skin. The young prospect whose name Tom had never learned. But there were dozens more. Hell's Angels from other chapters, other cities, all wearing the same colors, all moving with the same purpose. The columns split, half parking on one side of the street, half on the other, engines cutting out in perfect synchronization until the sudden silence was almost as overwhelming as the noise had been. Then Tom saw what was behind the motorcycles, and his knees went weak. Pickup trucks. 4 of them, beds loaded with lumber, drywall, tools, equipment. A cement mixer on a trailer. 2 bulldozers on flatbeds, massive yellow machines that dwarfed the houses around them. A crane, 40 feet tall when folded, probably 60 when extended. And more trucks, panel vans with company logos, contractors' vehicles, a whole construction convoy that stretched down the block. The neighbors were coming out of their houses now. Mrs. Patel across the street, clutching her youngest son, pulling him back toward their front door. Old man Vincent, who'd lived here since 1973, reaching for his phone, probably calling the police. The Johnsons, the Lees, the Ramirez family, all emerging onto their porches and lawns, staring at the invasion that had just descended on quiet Maple Street. The Thompsons' mailbox, the one with the foreclosure notice taped to it, stood at the edge of the property like a gravestone marking something already dead. Axel dismounted first. He was bigger than Tom remembered, or maybe it was just that seeing him here, in daylight, on Tom's own street, made him more real. He wore the same leather cut, the same boots, the same expression of absolute certainty. Behind him, the other bikers dismounted in sequence, standing beside their bikes like soldiers at attention. Tom opened the trailer door and stepped out, Lisa right behind him. He was barefoot, still in the clothes he'd slept in, unshaven except for the half-finished job he'd started. He must have looked like exactly what he was, a man who'd given up. Axel walked toward them, his boots crunching on the gravel driveway, and Tom saw the neighbors watching, saw Mrs. Patel disappear inside her house entirely. Then Axel reached them, and before Tom could say a word, he was pulled into a hug that lifted him off the ground. "Hey, brother," Axel said, setting him down. Then he turned to Lisa and did the same, lifting all 118 pounds of her like she weighed nothing. "Hey, Angel, you look like you've been through hell." Lisa laughed, a sound that was half sob. "We have been through hell." "I know." Axel set her down gently. "That's why we're here. Nobody touches our angels." He gestured behind him, and 2 men stepped forward. The first was in his 50s, lean and weathered, with a gray ponytail and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore jeans and a button-down shirt, not biker leather, but he had the same patch on his chest. "Hell's Angels. Member." "This is Ray," Axel said. "He's my cousin. Also happens to be a lawyer. Passed the bar in 4 states, including this one." Ray extended his hand. His grip was firm, professional. "Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson, I've been looking into your situation. The insurance denial, the foreclosure timeline. I've got some things to tell you. But first, meet Sandra." The second person was a woman in her 40s, short and stocky with arms that suggested she did physical labor for a living. She wore a Hell's Angels cut over a tank top, steel-toed boots, and a tool belt. Her handshake was even stronger than Ray's. "Sandra Vance," she said. "I own Rocky Mountain Construction. Been in business 23 years. I also happen to be Axel's sister, which is how I got roped into this circus. She smiled when she said it, took the edge off. I've been looking at your property. The damage assessment, the work that needs doing. We can fix this. Tom's head was spinning. A lawyer. A construction company owner. He looked past them at the trucks, at the bulldozers, at the 60-plus bikers standing in formation on his street. I don't understand. What's happening? What's happening? Ray said, pulling out a folder from a messenger bag. Is that I filed an emergency injunction at 8 a.m. this morning. Your foreclosure is frozen, effective immediately, pending a bad faith lawsuit against Mountain Trust Insurance. Frozen? Lisa's voice cracked. How is that possible? Because your insurance denial has all the hallmarks of fraud, Ray said. He opened the folder, showed them documents covered in legal language Tom couldn't process. I've been doing this a long time. I've seen this pattern before. Insurance companies that deny claims systematically, that hide behind fine print, that target vulnerable homeowners after disasters. Mountain Trust has done this to 87 families in this county alone. I'm filing a class action suit. Your case is the lead plaintiff. Tom stared at the papers. But the bank said Friday at 5. They said if we don't pay. The bank doesn't have authority anymore, Ray interrupted. The injunction supersedes their timeline. Your property is protected until the lawsuit resolves. That could take 6 months, maybe a year. But you're not losing your house today, or Monday, or anytime soon. The relief hit Tom so hard, he actually staggered. Lisa grabbed his arm, steadying him, and when he looked at her, she was crying. But that's just the legal side, Sanders said. The house itself is still trashed, right? You can't live in it. You're in this trailer that probably violates half a dozen building codes. We can't afford to rebuild, Tom said. Even if the lawsuit works, even if we eventually get insurance money, we don't have anything now. We're broke. We sold everything. Sanders smiled. That's where we come in. She gestured at the trucks, at the equipment. We're not repairing your house, Mr. Thompson. We're rebuilding it. Complete renovation. New foundation work, new electrical, new plumbing, new everything. And we're starting today. We can't pay you, Lisa said. We don't have any money. We can't even afford materials. Good thing we're not asking you to pay. Then, a new voice said. Tom turned and saw another biker, massive and broad, stepping forward. This one had dark skin and scarred knuckles, wore a cut that said Sergeant at Arms below his name. Hammer. I'm Hammer, he said. I run HV construction on the side, legitimate company, licensed and bonded. I've been doing this work for 20 years. Me and my crew, we're doing the labor for free. Consider it a thank you for saving our lives. But the materials, Tom protested. The foundation, the drywall, the electrical, that's got to be $50,000 minimum. $63,000, Tiny said, stepping forward. Tom remembered him from the flood, remembered how he dived into the water to save the young prospect. Up close, Tiny was even bigger than Axel, had to be 6'6" and 300 pounds. I've been doing pretty well since the flood. Investments. Turns out I'm good with money. I'm funding the materials. All of them. Consider it a thank you for saving my life. Tom couldn't speak. His throat had closed up entirely. Around them, more bikers were already moving, unloading lumber from trucks, positioning the bulldozers, setting up a work site with the efficiency of people who'd done this before. Why? Tom finally managed. Why would you do this? Axel put a hand on his shoulder. You pulled me out of the worst moment of my life. You didn't have to. That boat was overloaded. You were risking your lives, and you stopped anyway. You looked at 12 criminals on a roof and saw human beings worth saving. The Hells Angels don't forget that kind of thing. We're not charity, Lisa said, her voice shaking. We're not a project. No, Axel agreed. You're family, and this is what family does. We take care of our own. A black Range Rover turned onto Maple Street, moving slowly, the driver clearly confused by the scene. It pulled up to the curb 50 feet away, and a man stepped out. Expensive suit, perfectly styled hair, designer sunglasses. He looked at the bikers, at the construction equipment, at Tom and Lisa, and his face went through several expressions before settling on controlled anger. Tom recognized him. Richard Sterling. He'd never met the man, but he'd seen his picture in the local paper. Sterling Development Group, the biggest real estate developer in 3 counties. Sterling walked toward them, his shoes clicking on the pavement, and Tom saw something in his eyes that made his stomach turn. This wasn't curiosity. This was ownership. Like Sterling was looking at property that already belonged to him. "What's going on here?" Sterling asked, his voice smooth and cultured. Axel stepped forward, putting himself between Sterling and the Thompsons. He was 3 inches taller and probably 80 pounds heavier than Sterling, and the difference was stark. "You Sterling?" Axel asked. "Richard Sterling, yes. And you are?" "Axel Vance, president of the Hells Angels Blackwater chapter. These people are under our protection now." Sterling actually smiled. "Your protection? This is America. We have laws. You can't just—" "Can't what?" Axel interrupted, his voice dangerous and quiet. "Can't help a family rebuild their home? Can't donate time and materials to flood victims? What law would that be breaking, exactly?" Sterling's smile didn't waver, but something cold crept into his eyes. "This property is under a city condemnation order. You're wasting your time and money." "Actually," Ray said, stepping forward with his folder, "there is no condemnation order. I checked this morning with City Hall. There's a pending condemnation hearing, but it hasn't happened yet. And it requires 7 days' notice to the property owners, notice that was never properly served." Sterling's jaw tightened. "That's a technicality." "The law is made of technicalities," Ray replied. "I'm a lawyer. Technicalities are my specialty." "I also looked into your permits for that Blackwater Springs development you've been planning. Interesting thing, your environmental impact study was never completed. It's listed as pending with the EPA. And your wetland development permit? Also pending. You don't actually have authorization to build anything yet, Mr. Sterling." The color rose in Sterling's face. "Those permits will be approved. It's just a matter of time." "Maybe," Ray said. "Or maybe they won't be. What I do know is you've been operating under false pretenses, pressuring property owners to sell by claiming imminent condemnation that you don't have the legal authority to enforce. That's fraud. That's coercion. And I'm filing complaints with the State Attorney General's office this afternoon." Sterling looked at Ray, then at Axel, then at the 60 bikers who had all stopped working and were now watching this conversation with undisguised hostility. Tom saw the calculation happening behind Sterling's eyes, saw him weighing his options. "This isn't over," Sterling said finally. "Yeah, it is," Hammer replied from behind the bulldozer. "Here's how this is going to work. You're going to leave this family alone. You're going to withdraw whatever schemes you've got cooking. And if we hear you're still running your disaster capitalism operation in this town, we're going to make sure every newspaper in the state knows about your fraudulent permits and your predatory practices." Sterling said nothing. He just turned, walked back to his Range Rover, and drove away, his tires squealing slightly as he accelerated too fast down Maple Street. The bikers erupted in cheers and applause. Axel turned back to Tom and Lisa, grinning. "That felt good," he said. "Been wanting to do something like that for years." Tom watched the Range Rover disappear around the corner. Something cold was settling in his stomach, something that felt like dread. "He's not going to just give up," Tom said quietly. "Men like that don't give up." "Let him try something," Axel said. "We've got 60 brothers here and 300 more within 2 hours' drive. If Sterling wants a war, we'll give him one." But Tom kept staring at the corner where Sterling had disappeared. Because he'd seen something in Sterling's face in that last moment, right before he turned away. Not defeat, not fear, victory. Like this was exactly what Sterling had wanted. Like the bikers rebuilding the house, making it more valuable, was somehow part of a plan Tom couldn't see yet. And as the construction work began in earnest, as bulldozers roared to life and bikers started tearing out the damaged first floor, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just walked into a trap. 3 weeks later, Tom stood in what used to be his living room and couldn't recognize it. The flood-stained walls were gone, replaced by fresh drywall painted in warm gray tones Lisa had chosen from a color Sandra brought. The buckled hardwood floors had been ripped out, replaced with engineered wood that could withstand another flood if one ever came. The ceiling had been raised 8 inches, making the whole space feel bigger, brighter, like a different house entirely. Through the open doorway to the kitchen, he could hear Hammer arguing with one of his crew about the granite countertops. No, it goes this way. The grain runs parallel to the sink, not perpendicular. We're not doing this twice. Outside, a cement mixer turned slowly, pouring the last section of a reinforced foundation that Hammer swore could survive an earthquake, let alone a flood. Solar panels were being installed on the roof by a crew of 3 bikers who'd done commercial electrical work before joining the club. The whole property hummed with activity, had hummed with it every day for 3 weeks straight. The transformation wasn't just the house. It was the neighborhood. Week 1, the neighbors had been terrified. They'd watched from behind curtains as 60 bikers swarmed the Thompson property, convinced they were witnessing some kind of criminal operation. Mrs. Patel had kept her children inside for 4 days straight. Old man Vincent had called the police 3 times before the sheriff finally came out, took one look at the building permit Sandra had posted prominently on the fence, and told Vincent to stop wasting everyone's time. Week 2, things had changed. Mrs. Patel's son Rahul had been struggling to fix his bicycle, a chain that kept slipping, and he'd made the mistake of working on it in the front yard where Tiny could see him. Tiny had wandered over, this 6'6" mountain of muscle and tattoos, and Rahul had frozen in terror. Then Tiny had knelt down, examined the bike, and spent 20 minutes teaching the kid how to properly tension a chain, how to clean the gears, how to adjust the derailleur. When he finished, he'd ruffled Rahul's hair and walked away, leaving the kids staring after him in awe. Mrs. Patel had brought lemonade for the crew the next day. 2 pitchers of it, homemade, with mint from her garden. Week 3 had turned into something like a block party. The Johnsons brought coffee every morning. The Lee family, who owned a Chinese restaurant downtown, brought lunch for 30 people on Tuesday. The Ramirez family's daughter, who was studying to be a veterinarian, spent an entire Saturday helping Ghost, who apparently had 6 rescue dogs at home, understand some medication one of them needed. The bikers had started helping with other properties too. The Hendersons 3 doors down had roof damage from the hurricane that they couldn't afford to fix. Hammer's crew spent 2 days replacing their shingles, wouldn't take a penny for it. The Kozlowski family across the street had a fence that had been leaning since the flood. 6 bikers showed up one morning and had it repaired before lunch. Blackwater was learning what Tom and Lisa had learned on that first terrible night. The men in leather weren't monsters. They were mechanics and electricians and fathers and brothers who'd found family in an unlikely place. Tom was watching Axel teach him how to properly frame a doorway when Sandra's voice cut through the work noise. Everyone stop. Stop right now. The power tools went silent. The hammer blows ceased. 60 heads turned towards Sandra, who was standing by the fence, staring at a man in a polo shirt and khakis holding a clipboard. "Can I help you?" Sandra called out, her voice tight. The man smiled, a corporate smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just doing a routine property assessment for the county. Nothing to be concerned about." "Routine," Sandra repeated. "We've been working here for 3 weeks, and you show up now for a routine assessment?" "County's backlogged," the man said, already taking photos with his phone. "Hurricane created a lot of work. We're just now getting to this area." Ray appeared from inside the house, moving fast. "Sir, I'm going to need to see your identification and your authorization to be on this property." The assessor pulled out a badge, showed it briefly. "Dennis Porter, County Property Assessment Office." "Like I said, routine inspection." Ray pulled out his phone, started taking his own photos. Of the assessor, of the badge, of everything. "Mr. Porter, this property is currently under legal protection due to ongoing litigation. Any assessment needs to be coordinated through the court." Porter shrugged, continued taking photos. Close-ups of the new foundation, the electrical panel, the roof work. "I'm just doing my job. Recording the current state of properties in the flood zone. You got a problem with that? Take it up with my supervisor." He spent another 10 minutes walking the property, making notes, taking measurements. Sandra followed him the whole time, Her jaw clenched, her hands balled into fists. When he finally left, climbing into a white county sedan and driving away, she turned to Ray. "That wasn't routine," she said. "No," Ray agreed. "That wasn't." That night, Ray disappeared into research mode. He set up in the FEMA trailer with his laptop, started pulling county records, cross-referencing property assessments, tracking patterns. Tom brought him coffee at midnight and found him still typing, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. "Found something?" Tom asked. Ray turned the laptop so Tom could see. A spreadsheet filled with addresses, dates, names. Richard Sterling owns 40% of the foreclosed properties in Blackwater County. 40%. That's not coincidence. That's systematic acquisition. He pulled up another document, emails between Sterling Development and Mountain Trust Insurance. "Look at this. These emails are from before the hurricane. Sterling's team is flagging properties, specific addresses, including yours. They're identifying high-value land in the floodplain." Tom leaned closer, reading over Ray's shoulder. The email subject line read, "Priority acquisition targets, hurricane season prep." "They knew," Tom said quietly. "They knew the dam might fail." "They didn't just know," Ray said. "They planned for it. Look at the dates. Sterling bought shares in Mountain Trust Insurance 8 months before Hurricane Devine hit. He's on the board now, has voting power. Then the hurricane comes, the dam fails, and suddenly Mountain Trust starts denying claims left and right. People can't rebuild, can't afford their mortgages, properties go to foreclosure. And who's there to buy them for pennies on the dollar? Sterling," Tom finished. He felt sick. He engineered this. All of it. 87 families, Ray said, pulling up another list. 87 foreclosures in 6 months, all in the flood zone, all with insurance claims denied by Mountain Trust. Sterling bought 71 of those properties. The average purchase price was 1/10 of the pre-flood value. Tom did the math in his head. Millions of dollars. Tens of millions. Built on the suffering of families just like his, people who'd lost everything and then been systematically crushed by a system designed to help them. "We can prove this," Tom asked. "I can prove enough to bury him," Ray said. "Fraud, racketeering, conspiracy. Federal charges. But it'll take time. 6 months to build the case, maybe another 6 to get to trial. The problem is, the foreclosure auction," Tom interrupted. "Even with the injunction, there's still debt. The bank will eventually get their auction." Ray nodded. "And when they do, Sterling will be there. He'll bid, he'll win, and by the time we expose him in court, he'll own your house. Your beautiful, newly renovated house that we just spent 3 weeks and $63,000 rebuilding." Tom walked outside, needed air, needed to think. The house was dark now, work finished for the day, but he could see its shape against the stars. It was beautiful, better than it had been before the flood, better than he and Lisa could have ever afforded on their own. And Sterling was going to take it. He found Lisa in the trailer, sketching something in a notebook. She was an artist when she had time, which was rarely, but lately she'd started drawing again. She looked up when he entered, saw his face. "What's wrong?" Tom told her everything. The emails, the pattern, Sterling's systematic destruction of 87 families for profit. When he finished, Lisa set down her pencil. "So we're just delaying the inevitable," she said. "The bikers rebuilt our house, and Sterling gets to buy it at auction anyway. Ray's filing the class action suit. Federal charges. But it'll take too long. How long do we have? The injunction bought us time, but the bank's pushing. 2 weeks, maybe 3 before they force an auction date." Lisa looked around the trailer, this metal box they'd lived in for 4 months now. "We should tell Axel. Tell all of them. They deserve to know their work might be for nothing." But when they found Axel the next morning, already on site at 7 a.m., and told him everything Ray had discovered, his reaction wasn't what Tom expected. "Good," Axel said. Tom blinked. "Good. Now we know what we're fighting. And we know he's dirty. That's ammunition." Axel cracked his knuckles, a sound like small branches breaking. "Sterling thinks he's smart. Thinks he can hide behind lawyers and corporations and legal paperwork. But he made one mistake. What mistake? He threatened our family, Axel said. And the Hells Angels take that very, very personally. The confrontation came that afternoon. Sterling's Range Rover pulled up to the worksite at 2 p.m. And Sterling stepped out wearing a suit that probably cost more than Tom's truck. He surveyed the property with the expression of a man inspecting something he already owned. Sandra saw him first, put down her drill, and walked over. Axel followed, then Hammer, then more bikers until Sterling was surrounded by a semicircle of leather and muscle and barely restrained hostility. Impressive work, Sterling said, gesturing at the house. You've increased the property value considerably. I'd estimate it's worth $650,000 now, maybe $700. Up from what? $300 before the flood. What do you want, Sterling? Axel asked. Sterling smiled. I wanted to make sure the Thompsons understand their situation. See, even with Ray's clever little injunction, they still owe $287,000 on this property. That debt doesn't disappear. And when the lawsuit fails, and it will fail, my lawyers are very good, the bank will foreclose. The property goes to auction. He paused, let that sink in. And I'll be there to buy it. Probably for $50,000 since no one else will dare bid against me. Tiny took a step forward, his fists clenched. Axel held up a hand, stopped him. So all this work, Sterling continued, gesturing at the beautiful new house. All your time and money and effort. You just made me very rich. This property will be worth $700,000 once I own it. I'll flip it for that, maybe more. So thank you. Sincerely. Tom saw Axel's jaw clench, saw the vein in his temple pulse. For a moment, he thought Axel might actually hit Sterling, might cross that line that would give Sterling exactly what he needed. Evidence of violence, of criminal behavior, something to use against them. But Axel stayed still. You've got this all figured out, huh? I've been doing this for 20 years, Sterling said. You can't beat the system. The system is designed for people like me. Poor people lose. That's how it works. We'll see about that, Axel said quietly. Sterling laughed, actually laughed, and turned back to his Range Rover. You'll see, all right. See you at the auction, Mr. Thompson. Bring your checkbook. He drove away, and the bikers stood in silence, watching him go. Ray emerged from the house, his face grim. I heard all of that. He's right, you know, about the legal timeline. I can drag this out, maybe by another month, but eventually the bank will get their auction. And when they do, we lose, Lisa finished. We lose everything. Unless, Ray said slowly, looking at Axel. Unless what? Tom asked. Axel was quiet for a long moment, staring at the house they'd built. Then he pulled out his phone, started making calls. Tom heard fragments of conversation. Need you here. Blackwater. Auction situation. Bring everything. After the fourth call, Axel hung up and looked at Tom. That auction Sterling's so confident about? It's public, right? Anyone can bid. In theory, Ray said. But Sterling's reputation scares off competition. He's bought 71 properties at auction in 6 months. No one bids against him. Because no one has the resources to outbid him, Axel said. Or the motivation. He smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. But we do. Both. Axel, Ray said carefully, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maybe $500,000 by the time bidding's done. The club doesn't have that kind of liquid cash. The club has 400 members across 4 states, Axel replied. Members who remember what Tom and Lisa did. Members who've heard the story. Members who hate vultures like Sterling on principle. He turned to Tom. We can't stop the auction. Ray's right about that. But we can make sure Sterling doesn't win it. You'd bid? Tom asked. On our house. We'd bid, Axel confirmed. And if we win, we sign it right back over to you. Free and clear. No mortgage. No debt. Your house, your property, forever. Tom couldn't speak. The idea was insane. Generous beyond comprehension. And maybe impossible. You can't raise that kind of money, Lisa said. That's $500,000. Watch us, Axel said. Over the next 2 weeks, as Ray fought a legal delaying action in court and Hammer's crew put the finishing touches on the house, something extraordinary happened. The call went out through the Hells Angels network. For 100 members across Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, New Mexico. The story of the couple who'd saved 12 drowning bikers spread like wildfire, grew with each telling, became legend. Money started coming in. $100 here, $500 there. Members who'd never met Tom and Lisa contributed their savings. Entire chapters held fundraisers. A Montana chapter auctioned off a custom bike and donated the proceeds, $18,000. The Wyoming chapters held a benefit concert that raised $22,000. Tom watched it happen in disbelief. Watched the total climb on a spreadsheet Ray maintained. 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. It kept growing. The house was finished on day 19. Hammer did a final walkthrough with Tom and Lisa, showing them everything. New foundation rated for seismic activity. Electrical system with a backup generator that would kick on automatically if power failed. Plumbing with shut-off valves at every fixture. Kitchen with granite counters, stainless appliances, soft-close cabinets. Bathrooms with heated floors, Tiny's insistence, because he said every house should have them. It was perfect. It was their dream home. And in less than a week, it would go to auction. The night before the auction, Ray knocked on the FEMA trailer door at 11 p.m. Tom answered. Found Ray standing in the darkness looking shaken. What's wrong? I just got a call from a source at the county assessor's office, Ray said. Someone I trust. She told me Sterling knows about the fundraising. Knows the bikers are planning to bid. How would he know that? Because his people have been watching. Tracking. They know we've raised money. Ray paused. Tom, they know we've raised $493,000. Tom felt cold spread through his chest. That's exactly how much we've raised. Down to the dollar. Which means Sterling knows exactly how high to bid, Ray said. He knows our ceiling. All he has to do is bid $1 more, and we can't match him. Can we raise more? Another 10,000, 20,000. Ray shook his head. Not in time. The auction's tomorrow at 10 a.m. Even if we could raise more, Sterling's people would know. They're monitoring us. They've probably tapped phones, hacked emails, something. They know everything we're doing. Tom sat down on the trailer steps, his head in his hands. So we lose. After everything, we still lose. I don't know, Ray said. Maybe. Unless, he stopped, thinking. Unless we have something Sterling doesn't know about. Something we've kept completely secret. A reserve we haven't disclosed to anyone. We don't have a reserve, Tom said. $493,000 is everything. Every dollar the club could raise. Ray was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. He walked away before Tom could respond, disappearing into the darkness. And Tom sat on the trailer steps, looking at the house that was about to be stolen from them, and wondered if there was any justice left in the world. Inside the trailer, Lisa was already asleep, exhausted from another day of watching their dream become reality while knowing it might evaporate tomorrow. Tom lay down beside her, closed his eyes, and tried not to think about Sterling's smile, about the auction, about losing everything again just when they'd gotten it back. At 6 a.m., his phone buzzed. A text from Axel. Be at the courthouse at 9:45. We're something nice. And Tom, trust me. Tom stared at the message. We're something nice. For an auction where they were about to lose everything. Where Sterling was going to take their house, their beautiful rebuilt house, for a fraction of what it was worth. He got up, showered in the trailer's tiny bathroom, put on the one suit he owned that he hadn't sold. Lisa wore a dress she'd kept for funerals and job interviews. They looked like people going to court, which they were, or people going to a funeral, which this might as well be. The drive to the county courthouse took 15 minutes. Tom's hands shook on the steering wheel the whole way. When they pulled into the parking lot, he saw Sterling's Range Rover already there, parked in a spot marked reserved. But he also saw something else that made his heart stop. Motorcycles. Hundreds of them. More than he'd ever seen in one place. They filled the parking lot, lined the streets, stretched around the courthouse in every direction. And standing beside those bikes, wearing their colors, were bikers from across 4 states. Axel stood at the courthouse steps, and beside him stood 4 men Tom had never seen before, each wearing a patch that read President above their chapter names. Montana. Wyoming, New Mexico, Colorado Springs. Axel saw Tom and Lisa, smiled, and gestured for them to come up the steps. As they approached, he said 5 words that Tom didn't understand. We found the reserve. The county courthouse steps were cold November granite under Tom's dress shoes, and the morning air carried the bite of winter coming. 200 people crowded the plaza, maybe more, a mix of investors in business suits, curious locals, news cameras that had caught wind of something unusual happening, and an army of bikers whose motorcycles had turned the courthouse square into something that looked like a festival or a siege, depending on your perspective. Tom's heart hammered as he climbed the steps to where Axel waited with the 4 chapter presidents. Up close, he could see these were serious men, older than most of the bikers Tom had met, with gray in their beards and scars that told stories he'd never hear. The Montana president was easily 70, his face like weathered leather, his eyes sharp as broken glass. Tom, Lisa, Axel said, meet the council. These are the regional presidents. They're here because what happened to you, what you did for us, matters to more than just our chapter. The Wyoming president, a man named Kodiak with hands like sledgehammers, stepped forward. We heard what you did. 12 men in an overloaded boat. You could have died. Should have died, probably. But you stopped anyway. That kind of thing, the New Mexico president added, his voice carrying a slight accent. That deserves recognition. The clubs voted. We're backing this play. Tom didn't understand. Ray had said they'd raised $493,000, and Sterling knew it. What could these presidents add that would make a difference? Before he could ask, the courthouse doors opened and the auctioneer emerged, a thin man in his 60s carrying a podium and a microphone. Behind him came Sterling, flanked by 2 lawyers in matching suits, his expression one of absolute confidence. He saw the bikers, saw the presidents, and his smile widened. Like this was exactly what he'd expected, exactly what he wanted. The auctioneer set up his equipment on the top step, his voice crackling through the speakers. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're here for the public auction of 428 Maple Street, Blackwater, Colorado. Property appraised at $650,000 current market value. Opening bid is set at $50,000. Do I have $50,000? Sterling's hand went up immediately. $50,000. The auctioneer nodded. $50,000 to the gentleman in the blue suit. Do I hear 60? Silence. The crowd shifted nervously. Everyone knew who Sterling was, knew what happened to people who bid against him. Jobs lost. Businesses denied permits. The kind of pressure that came from having friends in City Hall and the county commissioner's office. Going once at $50,000, the auctioneer said. $500,000, Axel called out. The crowd gasped. Sterling's head whipped around, his smile faltering for just a moment before returning, harder now, meaner. $510,000. Axel didn't hesitate. $520,000. Tom grabbed Axel's arm. What are you doing? We only have $493. You're bidding money we don't have. Axel didn't look at him, kept his eyes locked on Sterling. Trust me, brother. Sterling's jaw tightened. $530,000. $540, Axel countered. Back and forth it went, the price climbing in $10,000 increments. Tom felt Lisa's hand find his, felt her trembling. This was insane. They were going to lose, and worse. Axel was going to be on the hook for money the club didn't have, money he'd promised in front of 200 witnesses. The bidding hit $590,000. Tom could see sweat on Sterling's forehead now, despite the cold. His lawyers were whispering urgently to him, one showing him something on a tablet. Sterling's face went red. $600,000, Sterling said, his voice tight. $610,000, Axel replied. Sterling turned to his lawyers, and Tom could see the conversation even without hearing it. One lawyer shaking his head, the other showing numbers, documents, something that was making Sterling's face go from red to purple. Sterling looked at the auctioneer, opened his mouth, closed it again. $610,000 going once, the auctioneer said. Sterling's hands clenched into fists. He looked at Axel with pure hatred. $620,000. $630,000, Axel said. $640,000. $650,000. Sterling's lawyer grabbed his arm, whispered something urgent. Sterling shook him off. $660,000. Axel smiled. $670,000. And then Tom saw it. Saw Sterling's lawyer step in front of him, physically blocking him from raising his hand again. Saw the lawyer's lips move. You don't have it, Richard. Your line of credit is maxed. Sterling's face went pale. He turned to the auctioneer, started to speak, but no words came out. His empire, his systematic acquisition of 87 properties, his careful manipulation of insurance claims and foreclosures, it had all been built on leverage, on borrowed money and lines of credit, and the assumption that no one would ever challenge him hard enough to expose how thin his actual resources were. $670,000 going once, the auctioneer called. Sterling stood frozen, his mouth working soundlessly. Going twice. One of Sterling's lawyers turned and walked away, just left, heading for the parking lot. The other started gathering papers, distancing himself from what was about to happen. Sold, the auctioneer declared, to the gentleman representing the Hells Angels for $670,000. The crowd erupted. Bikers cheered. News cameras surged forward. Tom felt his knees go weak, felt Lisa catch him, both of them shaking with relief and disbelief and confusion because they still didn't understand where the money had come from. Axel turned to them, pulled out a duffel bag that Tiny had been holding. He unzipped it, showed Tom stacks of cash, all counted and banded. The $493 we raised from members. That's here. But we also got contributions from the national organization. The Hells Angels have chapters in 47 states, Tom. When the story went out, when they heard what you did, they voted to help. Another $200,000 came in yesterday. We kept it secret, didn't tell anyone, not even Ray, because we knew Sterling had sources, knew he was monitoring us. The Montana president stepped forward. We also sold off some club assets. 3 bikes from the vault, collector pieces we'd been saving. That brought in another $100,000. Total, we had $843,000 available to bid. Tom couldn't speak, couldn't process what he was hearing. Behind them, Ray was approaching Sterling with a folder in his hands. Mr. Sterling, Ray called out. I believe you've been served, but let me make this official. Sterling spun around, and his face when he saw Ray was terrible to witness. All the confidence, all the smugness, all the superiority had drained away, leaving something desperate and cornered. Federal class action lawsuit on behalf of 87 families, Ray said, opening the folder. Fraud, racketeering, conspiracy, and insurance fraud. I've also contacted the FBI. They're very interested in your relationship with Mountain Trust Insurance and your advanced knowledge of their claim denials. Securities fraud is a federal crime, Mr. Sterling. The emails I found show you buying into the insurance company, then influencing their denial decisions to benefit your real estate acquisitions. Sterling grabbed for the papers, but Ray pulled them back. You'll get your copy. The FBI will be serving you later today. Your assets are being frozen pending investigation. And those permits you were so confident about? I spoke with the EPA this morning. They're launching an inquiry into how you got preliminary approval without completed environmental studies. Turns out someone in the approval office is your cousin. That's called corruption. 2 county police cars pulled up to the courthouse, and Tom recognized the sheriff stepping out. But instead of approaching the bikers, the sheriff walked straight to Sterling. Richard Sterling, I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of bribery and fraud. Sterling's remaining lawyer tried to intervene. Sheriff, this is highly irregular. My client hasn't been. Your client bribed a county assessor to falsify condemnation reports, the sheriff said. We have Dennis Porter in custody right now. He's cooperating fully. Told us everything about your operation, including the offshore accounts you used to pay him. The cameras caught it all. Sterling being handcuffed, being read his rights, being walked to a police car while news crews shouted questions. His Range Rover sat abandoned in its reserved spot, a monument to arrogance that had finally met its match. When the police cars drove away, the crowd began to disperse. Investors who'd come hoping for bargain properties slunk back to their cars. Locals who'd watched Sterling operate with impunity for years stood in clusters, talking in hushed, excited voices about his downfall. Axel handed Tom a deed, freshly signed. "It's yours. The house, the property, everything. Free and clear. No mortgage. No debt. Your home, forever." Tom looked at the paper, at the legal language that said the property at 428 Maple Street now belonged to Tom and Lisa Thompson, with no liens, no encumbrances, no strings attached. "Axel, this is $670,000. We can't." "You already paid," Axel interrupted. "6 months ago in a boat that should have sunk. You paid with your lives, with your courage, with the decision to see human beings instead of criminals." The club voted unanimously. "This is paid in full." Lisa was crying, clutching the deed to her chest. Around them, bikers were starting their engines, preparing to leave. The Montana president approached, shook Tom's hand with a grip that made his bones creak. "You did good, son," he said. Reminded us all that sometimes the scariest thing you can do is be kind when everyone else chooses fear. Don't forget that. The next 3 months moved like a dream. Ray's lawsuit expanded as more victims came forward, families who'd lost homes to Sterling's scheme. The FBI investigation uncovered millions in fraudulent transactions. Sterling's development company collapsed, his assets seized, his empire dismantled piece by piece. Gerald Moss, the banker who'd threatened Tom and Lisa, lost his license and testified against Sterling in exchange for a reduced sentence. He got 3 years. Last anyone heard, he was working at a car wash in Denver, no longer making decisions about other people's financial futures. Mountain Trust Insurance settled the class action lawsuit for $18 million, distributed among 87 families. Tom and Lisa received $433,000, more than enough to cover the debt they'd accrued during the crisis. They put the rest in a college fund for the daughter Lisa was carrying, 8 weeks pregnant when the auction happened, though they hadn't known it yet. Sterling himself got 15 years in federal prison. The judge at sentencing called his operation a systematic exploitation of human suffering and showed no mercy. The house on Maple Street became something of a landmark. Tour buses sometimes drove past, guides pointing it out as the place where the Hells Angels had rebuilt hope. A plaque went up by the front door, "Built by Angels, for Angels, 2024. Tom and Lisa moved in on Christmas Eve, their first night in their own home in 8 months. The hardwood floors gleamed. The granite counters reflected candlelight. The heated bathroom floors, Tiny's gift, kept their feet warm on cold mornings. It was perfect. It was home. Their daughter, Hope, was born in April. Axel was the first non-family visitor, this massive biker in full leather holding a newborn baby with a gentleness that made nurses stare. Hope grabbed his finger and wouldn't let go, and Axel cried, didn't even try to hide it. "She's got a grip," he said. "She's going to be strong." The Hells Angels expanded their fundraising into a nonprofit, Angels of Disaster Relief. They partnered with FEMA, responding to hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires across the country. They brought construction crews, supplies, and muscle to places where people had lost everything. In 18 months, they helped 12,000 families rebuild. The story went viral, became a documentary that won an Emmy, sparked conversations about disaster capitalism and corporate greed, and the unexpected places heroes could come from. But for Tom and Lisa, it remained personal. It remained about one choice, made on the worst night of their lives, to stop the boat. 1 year after the auction, they held a barbecue in their backyard. 150 bikers showed up, from 4 states, all of them family now. Hope, 8 months old, wore a tiny leather vest that said Angel on the back, a gift from the club. She crawled from biker to biker, fearless, laughing as these massive men made silly faces and played peek-boo with hands that had seen violence and chosen gentleness instead. Tom found Axel by the grill, flipping burgers with the concentration of a surgeon. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything, brother." "That night, on the roof, were you really as scared as you looked?" Axel was quiet for a moment, watching the burgers sizzle. "More scared than I've ever been." I watched my brother drown when I was 8 years old. I've had nightmares about water ever since. Being on that roof, watching the flood rise, knowing I couldn't swim, that was every nightmare I'd ever had coming true at once. But you got in the boat anyway. Because your wife looked at me, this giant terrifying biker, and she said, "I've got you," like she meant it. Like I was worth saving. Axel flipped a burger, and his voice went soft. Nobody had looked at me like that in 30 years. Like I was human. Like I mattered. That changed something in me, Tom. Changed all of us. Tom raised his beer. To changes. Axel clinked his bottle against Tom's. To the angels who didn't look away. As the sun set over Blackwater, over the house that had been destroyed and rebuilt, over the family that had been broken and made whole, Lisa stood on the back porch holding hope. She looked at the yard full of bikers and neighbors and friends, at the improbable community that had formed from catastrophe, and she smiled. On the wall inside, framed above the fireplace, hung the original business card Axel had given her that terrible night. Faded, water-stained, barely legible. Below it, a new plaque read, "When the world sees monsters, see humans. When the system sees victims, see family. And when you have the chance to save someone, even if it costs you everything, stop the boat." Because sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes heroes wear leather instead of capes. And sometimes the scariest thing you can do, the bravest thing, is to choose kindness when everyone else chooses fear. So here's my question for you. Who in this story impacted you the most? Was it Tom and Lisa's courage in that overloaded boat? Was it Axel's vulnerability and transformation? Was it Ray's relentless pursuit of justice? Or maybe it was the collective power of the Hells Angels, proving that family isn't always blood? Drop a comment and tell me which character resonated with you and why. And if this story reminded you that good people still exist in this world, if it gave you even a small spark of hope, share it. Because someone in your life needs to hear this today. Someone needs to remember that when everything falls apart, sometimes strangers become family. Sometimes the people we fear the most become the ones who save us. Share this story. Let it spread. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you see someone who looks different, sounds different, lives different, you'll remember the couple who stopped their boat and the bikers who rebuilt their world.